I started doing the drawings at the beginning of the COVID pandemic, and everyone was staying home, and I didn't think anyone was going to be buying any art. So, and I was really freaking out over the COVID thing. So the first drawings were done on small paper, using a pen that I just discovered on Instagram, and using some scraps of Stonehenge printmaker's paper that my son had left behind. When I put that ink to that paper, I hadn't drawn in ink in years, really. And it just awakened this torrent of imagery that just kept coming out. You know, the first 24 drawings were really all just based on the COVID, you know, and I called it my COVID diary, you know, because really it took all of 2020 to draw it. So, you know, but other than but even the COVID drawings were just barely planned, you know. I mean, I come to the table with a piece of paper and a soft pencil, and I just start laying out basically areas, and then I lay out shapes, and then I decide, okay, this shape is going to be this, and then the narrative builds up around it. It's an odd way of working, you know. I don't know that I could recommend it. I didn't know how often I was going to be able to go to the studio in 2020. As it turns out, people were buying art left and right. It's a good year for me. But you know, you didn't want to get out much. You didn't want to go out as much as you had if you didn't have to. I had this paper and I had this time, and I was just at home with, you know, an endless, bottomless pot of coffee, and I just decided I'd figure out. And the first drawing was so magical, I suppose, because I didn't know what to expect. I was just gonna draw and see what happens. The first one was so magical for me that I immediately started another one. I just couldn't stop. I forgot how much I loved drawing. You know, I mean, I grew up, that's all I had when I was a kid. You know, a ballpoint pen or a pencil and the ruled, you know, school paper. So that's all I did right up until college, right up until I took my first painting class at Del Mar here in Corpus. Up until then, it was all ink, you know, and I was pretty good at it. I mean, I have a natural inclination for drawing, I have talent. So, but once I started painting, I mean, that's a process in itself, and it's different, and it just took up a lot of my time. And that's why when I went back and tried the drawings, it was just amazing for me. I was elated. My wife thought it was weird. You know. My mother fell down at home and broke her femur at the very end of 2021. And you know, she went to the hospital, she had to get it fixed, and then she was in rehab. And then afterwards, well, I'm the only child of hers that still lives in town. So, you know, my wife and I decided I should just move in, take care of her, and she and I, you know, basically cared for her for a year. And I lived in the house really until she was up and walking on her own and doing everything on her own. So when I got there, I knew I couldn't go to the studio. So I had all this Stonehenge now because I kept ordering and making drawings. And so I, you know, got some Stonehenge and I just set up on the kitchen table like I did when I was 12. And I just started drawing, you know, and, you know, my mom would call me for something, I'd go take care of her, then come back and I'd draw some more. And luckily, I was doing a drawing a day, or 2 days. No, it was a day for the most part. I'd start in the morning, finish it by the evening, and I'd post it on Facebook and Instagram, and I usually got a sale that evening, you know, so, you know what, those drawings basically supported for 2021. I did very little. 2022, I did very little painting, you know, until the very end. At the very end, I did a giant mural, but, you know, for the most part, it was the drawings that paid the bills. I have a friend who photographs everything I make. He's an old college buddy. He's more than happy to do it. I go visit him. So everything's recorded in high resolution, and, you know, he'll send me the digital image, and I store it. It's just something we've been doing for a long, long time. And then I send the images to my son. He lives in Richmond, Virginia. He's an artist up there. And he will, over time, he started talking about we should do a book, and I agreed. There's plenty of good images here. So it took a while because he had his own stuff going on. He had his own businesses and all that. And so finally, this past year, he said, I can do it now. I got time. So, all right, do it. I didn't really do much. He did the whole job. I did the drawings, but he put it together, did the editing. I mean, I made a few suggestions in terms of some of the images, but otherwise it was his little job. Wood. The Allegory Wood was a title to a show I had up in North Texas, like in 2021 or 22, and it was all drawings because I really hadn't been painting, and they were allegories. They were all stories. I'm a storyteller. My dad's side of the family, he and his brothers, he had 8 brothers and a sister, and they're all great storytellers, and they loved nothing more than to sit around together in the backyard and drink beer and tell stories, and they were all just hilarious. Great stories, some scary, of course, but they were really good storytellers, and I just sat there and I would just absorb what my dad was doing, and I kind of took up the mantle after he passed away. I really thought when I was a kid, really all the way up through high school, I thought I was going to go up to New York and be a comic book artist. It's really what I thought I was going to do, because the only experience I had with anything was ink. And so I thought, I'm going to do that for a living. But I took my first painting class, and it ruined me for life. But I've got, when you first start taking paintings, you're just doing, still lifes and things like that. And it wasn't until I was well out of college that I was able to nail down that I wanted to do narrative work, narrative imagery, tell a story. So these all tell a story of some sort.
Yeah.
A lot of them dream-based, because I dream prolifically. When I started painting and decided I was going to do narrative work, I was working in a whole different direction. God had spoken to me and told me to paint wrestlers. So I was doing a whole series of wrestlers, mass wrestlers with a bunch of busted up dolls. My sister had stuffed in her closet, And then I went to Mexico with some friends, just for the day, a day trip. And we used to go to Mexico all the time when I was a kid to visit family. And we'd always stop at the Mercado before we went home. And I always wanted one of those frogs. My dad wouldn't let me get one. And I couldn't understand why he wouldn't. It was like $1 at the time, I want to bring that movie home. Get away from there. So all my life denied my frog. So as a grown man, I was buying all kinds of stuff. I was carrying a loaded stuff. And I happened to see a few frogs. One was playing a little one playing an accordion, and then another one was drinking beer, and while his friends passed out. And just funny little tableaus. So at the end of the trip, I get home and I'm sitting in the kitchen. I'm drinking a beer, smoking a cigarette, and I'm looking at all the stuff I bought. And I pick up the little frog, and as I'm looking at it, I notice there's like a little knot, like a stitch between its legs. And I'm like, what the hell is that all about? So I look at the mouth and I realize it's got a little stitch in the mouth too. The lips are sewn shut, but there's sawdust peeking through. And that's when I realized this isn't a toy, this is an actual taxidermied toad. Someone killed a frog, took out the insides, and then stuffed it and shellacked it, nailed its little feet to the wooden board, nailed its little hands to the accordion, and then they became martyr frogs for me after that. After that, they was like, I was obsessed with them. Oh my God, they died for tourism. And so I started painting these frogs, first just based off what I had, painting them in little settings. And then I had them wandering the earth, and then I started pinning milagros on them, because that's what happens with martyrs, right? They've all got their little symbol, So I kept pinning these milagros as I came across them all over and making them bloody, and people were buying them, so that encouraged me. I'm just going to keep doing what I want. So over time, the frog is kind of, he's morphed. At the beginning, he was having religious visions and making prophecies and fighting the devil. And he had a halo, and just strange, but still some of my favorite paintings. Now the frog pretty much more or less represents me. I like to put myself in the paintings without having to put myself in the paintings. really every character in my work is someone in my life, or someone that I watched on TV. Different characters. I did a lot of wooden skeletons because my wife, when we were dating, she bought me a few. Just doing everything she could to keep me.
Of course. Why not? As one should.
But I use them a lot. The bigger ones, as I kept getting bigger and bigger. Now I do half sheets, which is 15 by 22. Those are 11 by 15. I think I've done both sides actually. Those take a few days because I'm literally cross-hatching everything. I haven't started using, like, say, ink washes or anything yet. If I want black, I'm literally sketching with a black pen, and I go through a lot of pens. How do you know when the drawing's finished? Man, I ask myself that all the time. I know it's finished when I sign it. Once I sign it, I won't mess with it anymore. I had to because, and I'm sure a lot of artists are like this. I'm sure a lot of artists will, sign a piece and then go back and work on it some more. As long as it's in the studio, it's in danger of being worked on, So you have to decide at some point when it's finished. So what I do is when I finally commit to signing the thing, then it's done, and I won't play with it anymore. Otherwise I'll be working on one painting for 6-7 months. To say I have an absolute favorite, no, not really. I love them all. They all have a story that I know of, and really I'm the only one who knows it unless you live with me. So I couldn't possibly say this is it.